When it comes to creating immersive environments or landscapes through the drawing process, understanding some key essential contextualizing details can really enhance the artwork and ultimately improve the quality of depth and composition. With that being said, we will be looking specifically at one of the most overlooked contextualizing details, and that is how to draw clouds. Now, clouds are seemingly complex due to their very abstract exterior. However, we'll find that they are actually quite easy to draw once broken up into a few digestible steps. With that being said, hey guys, my name is Matt. Welcome to another video by artincontext.org, where we explore various art related topics, and in today's tutorial we will be breaking down the process step by step on how to draw clouds. Now, we will be working with some very simple materials such as pen, pencil. We will also want an eraser, but the intention here is we will learn how to draw clouds through this process of forming a simple shape and then slowly refining it through some layering, where we start working with some shading, ultimately creating this quality of a three-dimensional cloud, specifically a cumulonimbus type cloud. So with that being said, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start by forming the cloud. Now, the idea is that we want to start shading the entire page, and this is where you can also maybe consider using something like charcoal. The idea here is to kind of give the page a darker tone, which we will then shape a cloud into by using eye erasers. Now, to keep the cloud shape in a classical cumulonimbus type shape, we want to imagine as if we are drawing a jagged triangle. So we want to slowly develop a weightiness to the cloud that is basically enlarged near the base or the bottom of the cloud, and then slightly becomes more narrow as it shifts towards the top of the cloud structure. The idea here is to slowly work with your eraser to create this triangular shape at first. A good suggestion would be to look at some cloud drawings as well and photographs for some reference. Now, as we shape the cloud with our erasers, we want to make sure that we also allow for some bulges and segments along the outline to stick out in these very sporadic moments. Now, again, clouds are very abstract, so you can play around with this idea of where these bulges and segments kind of protrude from the main structure of the cloud, but this is going to give it a more naturalistic quality, and we can also be more conscious of keeping our lines more rounded and not too sharp. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to erase the entire cloud shape. So once we have the outline established, we can now erase that entire shape, where we basically make the entire shape white. However, as you erase the cloud, try to envision how segments would start to appear as you do so. Now, this is where we already start to think about how to form segments within the cloud. So cumulonimbus clouds tend to have more weight near the base of the cloud, which often leads them having larger, darker shadow patterns that sit at the bottom of the cloud. So using our pencils, we can start to basically shade in large random shapes that kind of flow along the bottom section of the cloud. These shadow areas will obviously start to flow into the center area of the cloud and become slightly more narrow and smaller. And this is where we can play around with creating these segmentations within the cloud already at this point. Again, naturally, the bottom section of a cumulonimbus type cloud is going to be much more dense, and this is a more dense type of cloud formation, which kind of creates a more dense shadowing near the base because that area tends to be least exposed to the light source. So naturally, this is because the bottom surface area of the cloud often has larger segments and is least exposed to the light source that comes from above the cloud. Now, as the cloud segments kind of shift up through the cloud, they can become slightly more exposed to the light source. Therefore, a little bit more distinct line formation becomes more necessary for those smaller segmentations. But as we add shading to the cloud structure, we want to bear in mind the shift in the segment sizes. So moving from the lower half of the cloud to the top half, the segments become much more smaller and much more distinct in their line formation and outline structure. The lower half of the cloud doesn't have to be too distinct with lines. We also want to keep the shading quite vague along these areas of the cloud, and we can start to sharpen the line work and the segments as we move towards the top area of the cloud. You can also start to be more playful with how you shade in the clouds, so we don't necessarily need to add in line work. We can also add little shapes or spots that kind of sit together, little shading marks that kind of represent these smaller shapes that shift towards the top of the cloud. And the idea is to think about moving your way from the bottom of the cloud to the top of the cloud where you not only darken your marks, but you also make them slightly smaller as they shift towards the narrow section of the cloud. Now, as we continue, you also just want to make sure you are being very careful with adding in moments of shading, as the negative spaces are just as important as the marks we make. So the negative spaces are basically going to represent the qualities of exposure to light, or the illuminated sections within the cloud, and the marks represent the little areas of shadow. So the idea is to also be conscious of a direction from which the light source is present, and naturally this can kind of assist you in your shadow formation. So obviously the shadows are mostly dense at the bottom of the cloud, but we can kind of keep them predominantly to one side of the entire structure, or slightly darker, even as we lighten them throughout the entire cloud structure, and as we kind of shift towards the top of the cloud. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start forming segments in the upper section of the cloud. So take your time by adding smaller marks with your upper section of the cloud. Try to create these smaller segments, and then with those segments, little ripples and shapes for texture. The upper section of the cloud should take some time, where we are slowly trying to work with both marks and negative space to shape the cloud. We also want to make sure that the marks we make are not necessarily too sharp and quite small with the upper sections of the cloud. But once we have done that, we can actually start to darken the shading in the cloud. Now this is where we work in some darker marks or shading, going over the shaded areas in the lower half of the cloud. We want to make sure we go over these areas with a darker pencil, and we want to try and keep the transitions between lighter and darker moments quite seamless. So working with a medium where you can create the smooth shading, such as pencil or charcoal, is really useful in this kind of way. You can also do so with pen, but the intention is to just make sure you keep these transitions between shadows and lighter areas as seamless as possible. But otherwise, guys, make sure that you keep your shading quite loose and not too sharp, to keep the soft quality in the segments and shadows of the cloud. And that is how you draw a realistic cloud in a few simple steps. Really easy, really simple. Some key things to think about is, number one, use your eraser as a tool. The next thing to think about is actually working with a blunt pencil. This is much easier and keeps the marks quite soft instead of harsh. Working with a darker pencil, something between a 6B and a 9B, is a good suggestion as well. Also consider the scale of the different segments, making them slightly smaller as you shift towards the top of the cloud. And this is just going to emphasize that cumulonimbus shape. And then lastly, make sure you utilize negative space strategically. You want to maintain that quality of highlights within the cloud, keeping it soft and light, and just having the shadows predominantly more dense near the base of the cloud. But otherwise, guys, that is it on how to draw a cloud through a few simple steps. If you did find this video helpful and informative, please let us know in the comment section below. If you are also interested in similar or related topics, maybe other contextualizing details for landscapes and environment drawings, something like trees or mountains and so on, you let us know and we will look into it. But you can also show us some love by liking and subscribing. This is a small channel and your support means a lot to us, and that enables us to make more art related content for you guys, which we love to do. So otherwise, guys, thanks again for tuning in. That is it from me today. Until next time, cheers.